Everyone talks about the GTD productivity methodology, but they don't always talk about the personal development advice tucked away at the end of the book. So in this video, I want to share 3 concepts for becoming the type of person who naturally and effortlessly gets things done. But first, the nervous system can't tell the difference between a well-imagined thought and reality. Okay. Hey there, I'm Chloe and I'm the creator behind this channel as well as the owner of a business called Keshonomi. And as I said in the intro, everyone seems to talk about the GTD productivity system, but they don't always seem to talk about the personal development stuff. It's almost like it's hidden away and maybe people are talking about it, but they're kind of just whispering about it. And I really wish that they would talk louder about it, because there are some real gems to do with self-actualization that are tucked away pretty much at the end of the book after all of the talk about the productivity method. Now, in case you've been living under a rock for the last 10-15 years and you've not heard of GTD, it stands for Getting Things Done. And it's by this guy called David Allen. Ding! And he wrote a book called Getting Things Done, where he shared a productivity system that allows you to effortlessly and easily get things done, manage your time and your tasks and your projects. So the method emphasizes the importance of capturing all of your commitments into a trusted system, clarifying the desired outcomes, and regularly reviewing your lists and your projects. So GTD is essentially a method for freeing up your mental energy so that you can focus on the task at hand without the stress of worrying about everything else you've got to do. With that said, most people focus on talking about the method for capturing, clarifying and reviewing, but GTD is so much more than that. So here are what I think are 3 really juicy concepts that are going to help you grow as a person. Well, I mean, we're all growing wider, growing older, but these will help you grow wiser. So let's get to that first gem. Lowering your standards. Now, I know this sounds completely counterintuitive, but hear me out, because when it comes to taking action, lowering your standards can actually help propel you forwards. David Allen emphasizes that it's way more important to get things done at an acceptable level rather than not doing them at all, because they're never going to meet your impossibly high standards. So if you're one of the personality types that tends to have more of a perfectionistic trait, then you've probably tried to embrace phrases such as "done is better than perfect," "take imperfect action," or even "progress over perfection." However, as someone with the achiever as my #1 Clifton strength, I can tell you right now, those phrases do not work for me, because they still contain the word perfect in one form or another. And so the pressure is not released or relinquished from my being in any way, shape or form. But by telling myself it's okay to lower my standards, because I tend to put impossibly high standards on myself, and this can tend to lead to unnecessary stress. And then the fear of not doing a good job leads to procrastination and a downward spiral. Good enough is okay. It's more than okay. It's what you can achieve in the time you have available with the energy you have available. So this is how actively choosing to lower my standards can in fact propel me forwards. So this has been great personal development advice for me, because it comes from having a certain level of self-mastery in understanding what your traits are, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and how the two, both strengths and weaknesses, can hold you back and how you can use them to still propel you forwards. Now, the next gem isn't necessarily personal development advice, but it sets the stage for gem number 3. So let's have a look at gem number 2. Within GTD, there's a step for clarifying called next action, and some people can find this challenging, but it can be done in a few seconds if you follow one golden rule, which is use a verb. Because you see, actions require doing words in order to do them. And the added bonus is that by using a doing word, you'll also know what done looks like. McKeown also talks about this in his book, Effortless. In part 2, Effortless Action, he emphasizes the importance of taking the first obvious action, as well as defining what done looks like. And I've spoken about this before with my method for project planning, where I will begin with the completed project and figure out, well, what would be the step before that, and the step before that, and the step before that, and keep working backwards until I get to my current reality. And I'll leave a link at the end of this video to my complete project planning process in case you want to know more about that. Although gem number 2 isn't necessarily personal development advice, it's important to remember that knowledge isn't power unless it's applied, which means taking action. So yeah, you can read all of the personal development books and fill your brain with more and more ideas and concepts, but as David Allen says, the brain isn't a great place for storing ideas. You need to take action. So use a verb. But what if you're procrastinating on figuring out what the next action even is? Well, that's where gem number 3 comes in. Intelligently dumbing down. Bright, creative people tend to procrastinate most because their highly creative and beautifully visual minds can picture in vivid technicolor how things can go all shades of sideways. In the GTD book, specifically chapter 12, David Allen reminds us that the nervous system can't tell the difference between a well-imagined thought and reality. And he uses the example of a thought experiment with a lemon. And I've seen Marissa Peer do this on stage with an audience. And it's essentially this. Now, if you're driving, don't do this right now. Do it at a time when it is safe to do so. But what you need to do is close your eyes and imagine a bowl of fresh, juicy lemons on the table in front of you. And they are freshly picked. Maybe they've got some leaves on a few. Maybe there's still some dew on them. They are that fresh and juicy. And in this thought experiment, you are going to picture yourself picking up one of those lemons and taking it over to a chopping board, picking up a knife and piercing through the zest of the lemon with the knife. Maybe some of the zest oil sprays out. Maybe as you're cutting through it, some of the lemon juice is dribbling down onto the chopping board. And once you've cut yourself off a wedge, you bring it up to your mouth. You maybe take a moment to smell the zesty, citrusy scent of the lemon. Maybe there's even lemon juice dribbling down your fingers as you're holding onto that wedge, ready to shove it in your mouth and take a big bite. And you can taste all of that fresh, juicy lemon juice. Now, if you were really playing along and not just being an obstinate type of person, your mouth probably started to fill with saliva, even just a little bit, possibly. And this goes to show that your body responds to the images you give it. Now, creative people are very sensitive and highly imaginative. This is both their greatest asset and their greatest weakness. In the book, David Allen says that insensitive oafs will just plod onwards, but creative people, they can imagine how things, as I said, can go all shades of sideways, and this is what holds them back and causes procrastination. The idea behind intelligently dumbing down is to break a project down into smaller, more manageable and less intimidating steps. It goes back to gem number 2, or as Greg McKeown likes to put it, defining what done looks like and making the first obvious action. By doing so, you can avoid getting overwhelmed and becoming paralyzed by the magnitude of a project. And if you want to know how I avoid becoming paralyzed by the magnitude of a project, then watch this video next.